Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me in my part of the world where we're going to talk about transforming content for the chaotic world. And I have been fortunate to speak to many of you over the years at this wonderful virtual conference, which was well ahead of its time because everything has gone virtually. So it's great to see you again. And I thought, what would be a topic to really share with you this year as you write your own stories around DITA, as you heard, and all the topics that you've been discussing over the last couple of days. And so what's interesting is what I want to talk about is being able to adapt, being able to be creative in a digital-first customer journey with structure and with insights. So I do believe that structure actually is the bedrock of creativity. And to share a little of that, I thought that since we are in this new normal, I would share the corner of the space I'm in. So you might say to me, Loni, what is this place that you're showing me? What a mess. So this is actually exactly where I am speaking to you from. And what has happened is I live in two worlds. So in one world, I run product for Adobe Experience Manager. So I head up product management, product marketing, and really think about digital content, how companies think about marketing, tech comms, merchandising content coming together and really bring order and creativity to that digital content. The other part of my world, I create content. I create analog content. So I'm an oil painter. And so when this whole shelter in place and this 2020 came about, everything converged into my home. So this is literally part of my home. It used to be the dining room, which I did not need anymore at this point because I'm not having guests over right now. And so this is the convergence of my art studio from one area and my office from Adobe all into one area. And so this is actually where I'm broadcasting from. Now, what's interesting about this is my microcosm of chaos. I have a lot of tools going on. So I have my painting, my easel. I have my digital screens for looking at reference photos and things like that because I can't have live models anymore. I have all of my sketchbooks and everything else, and then I have my table back there, which is I think 1940s, 1930s Hamilton drafting desk. And on that is where I sit and have this laptop and I'm talking to you today. And this is where I spend my time trying to be creative, trying to deal with the chaos of creativity. But what's also interesting is there's structure in this set. And I have needed that structure in order to ensure that all my supplies, all my tools, all my references are in orderly fashion. There is organization here that you can see. If you look to the right, you can see that there is drawers, and there's many drawers. The rightmost is actually an old pharmacy lab drawer set where I have labels. So think of this as metadata on each of these elements, and there's fragments of stuff. There's fragments of charcoal. So I have all my graphite and charcoal in one box. In another, I might have some of my brushes that I may be using or spare parts for brushes. Another, I may have pastel and color pastels. And then to the left of that is actually, these are printers drawers. And in the olden days, this is from Chicago, is a set of drawers. And when they had printing presses, they would have those letters. For some of you, or, you maybe read stories about this, but these letters where they would set the letters and they would print, the newspaper, they would print all these things from those sets. And this is where they would store it in these drawers. And now what I use that is to store different years of drawings that I have, different painting panels and things like that. And so sharing a little of my world in this area, which has chaos and structure. And this is what I want to talk to you about, because as I'm responding to whatever my imagination may be in creating something new, having that structure and being able to actually access the right pieces of tools and content that's needed to create what I need to is actually really important. And so today what I want to talk about is transforming digital content for the chaotic world, jumping off of some of the things I've done in the analog world. Now, obviously, I'm talking about large companies. This is not, advice to be given to someone who's running an art studio. So it's scaled up, obviously, from that. But the same sort of principles apply to having creative chaos, but being able to organize and structure it. And the three things I want to talk about is that the events in 2020 have accelerated digital transformation by years. So the months that we've experienced have actually accelerated by years. The second is what we've observed is that businesses who have not been able to become digital first need to quickly adapt. And that applies to all the forms of content, including technical content. And then the third is that intelligent data and structured content for these digital experiences, including technical communications, is a critical foundation. And so in that story that Dawn was talking about earlier, I think that data structure is one of those tools. And at the end of the day, we are our own protagonists, and we must write and use it to really get to the fate that we want to get to, which is really being able to help our organizations become more agile, more nimble, and more creative because there is that bedrock of structure underneath. So first of all, what has changed since the last time we had a conversation together? And what's funny is one of the last real events I ever went to in 2020 was the user conference around XML in San Francisco. So it was great seeing many of you there in person, and a lot has changed. So first, digital transformation has accelerated in 2020. And these are some great stats that came out this year from McKinsey. So what we've seen is an increase of what we were projecting to be 10 years of trajectory around e-commerce to happen in 8 weeks. Okay. We saw telemedicine increase tenfold in just 15 days. People were starting to reach out around telemedicine. 20x participants in 3 months with remote working for those who are fortunate enough to be able to do their jobs remotely. And that has caused for different ways in collaboration with digital content. And then remote learning, 250 million in 2 weeks of students went online. And that is true even for my art practice. A group that tends not to be digital now is spending most of their time collaborating, learning online, which is why in my studio you saw there was a 2-screen setup. It wasn't just for my reference material, but also when I want to collaborate with other artists around the world. What's been wonderful about that is I've been able to talk to artists that have been in London or Glasgow who I haven't been able to actually interact with in the past. And finally, online entertainment. How many of us have been, spending time with our family, also trying to keep more calm in the chaos by spending more time on online entertainment. And I love the stories around the Broadway musicals because Wicked is one of my favorite musicals about the retelling of The Wizard of Oz. And many of the Broadway folks have been putting things in digital. I mean, how many, hands up that watched Hamilton on Disney streaming? I think that was a big event this year. I think every one of my Facebook friends, watched Hamilton on Disney streaming. And when we look at all of this move to digital, the digital interaction has now become the primary channel, and this is looking at B2B. And what's sort of interesting is we obviously know that B2C is important in digital, and we talk a lot about that. But if you look at even traditional sales with B2B that happen in person, A lot of those are now moved post, or during COVID. I can't say we're post-COVID because we're not post-COVID. So during COVID, you can see that the digital enabled sales channels has now become 2x that of the traditional channels. And then if you look at self-service, so what is the preference of the B2B buyer? What you see is that the research, the evaluate, order, reorder, all of that has increased, but especially the research and the evaluate stage. So a percent increase of 90% and 120% for research and evaluate. And this is actually even in 2019. So with 2020 and the stats we're showing, that has even gotten greater than this number. And so this is where I want to say that companies that have been already pushing towards digital, they were ahead when COVID hit in terms of being prepared and making sure that their channels were diversified. And then for others, 2020 has been a challenging but also a growth year in terms of getting those digital channels up and running. And a big part of that is with research and evaluate, and that deals not only with marketing content or what traditionally is considered marketing content, but also technical communications and support content, which I know is very much where this community is focused on, and how to be able to make sure that information is more easily accessible in digital channels, which, as you can see, is more important than ever before. And when we think about these new digital demands and what companies need to do to be able to make sure that they're providing this kind of content needed through the digital channels, is looking at these 5 areas that a business needs to address, which is around being able to offer proactive communication outreach. For many of what's happened in 2020, companies like, for example, financial institution that we work with need to make sure that their customers were constantly aware of what was the policy from the institution, what were the new programs available that could help and assist in this time, these challenging times, and also in being able to ensure that all of their products and all their B2B interactions could be done in a digital way. And that included financial prospectus and technical information that needed to be delivered. We already talked a little about self-service and digital adoption. So this spans all the way with commerce, but also in the research and evaluation phases, where individuals and businesses are looking to go online on their mobile apps and through other channels to be able to evaluate things. New ways of working, so employee collaboration. So this has not only to do with what we provide to our users and customers, but how teams within companies are collaborating on the latest content for support and for technical communications. And then how are we supporting the broader community as well? So we really look at, even at Adobe, at our customers being part of our community, and what can we do to really make sure we're overall helping each other to solve issues. And then obviously thinking about what happens when everybody is able to, as they're starting to return back to physical locations, what are the different strategies there that are needed, anywhere from being able to do direct delivery or pickups and things like that. And all of this is, of course, centered on a deep understanding of the customer, which is why when I think about the ways that every company, our companies that we work for, need to really respond, it's really starting off with that deeper understanding of customers and being able to get those early signals quickly, because all of that information I showed, such as many years of increase in e-commerce, happening in a few months, those are rapid things that need to happen. So it's great that I'm showing you some of these McKinsey stats, and Adobe has stats around this as well. But by the time that I'm in a presentation with you or anyone else that's speaking and flashing up slide with this stat, it's almost too late, right? It's almost at a point where, if you didn't know those things before and knowing them now, yes, you can respond to them, but there's already time that's been progressing where you haven't had the opportunity to respond. And if you look at that, it's like things that would have happened 10 years happening in a few months. So that deeper understanding of customer is not only deeper, but more rapid as well. In fact, this rapid digital transformation requires intelligent data management. And again, it's always interesting seeing these stats for 2019 because I feel like even though that was just a year ago, it feels like that was a decade ago, right? 2020 is like its own decade. But these things still ring true and I think are even increased. So having that intelligent data management really allows a company to respond in real time where appropriate and where it matters. So there's all of these. If you look at the diagram with the 5 areas, right, as a company and even in the technical communications area, thinking about what are the areas that I should respond to now? What are the areas I should work on? What is, if you are in your own sort of story, there may be, 2020, many dragons appeared, right? Which one do you have to go and slay first, right? And win that battle first. And so this data really helps, and it helps in a couple ways. In this research. One, it helps to think about how you transform the business model and the revenue. So for some of the companies that we work with, the data from the traffic in the mobile app as well as on the website start to inform what products, what services, what challenges customers were starting to think about in real time. Right? As consumers, we see the news. There was an uptick in various personal protective gear. There was an uptick in other areas of demand and solutions. Similar, those things are happening in the B2B world. It just may not be so publicized. So being able to really get that real-time information helps to think about different business models, revenue. And this is an area where technical communication should also be hooked in with this kind of analytics, right? Not just marketing content in order to get to those insights. Being able to transform customer service. A lot of our companies start to experience high levels of phone calls into support for support. And well, that was still a channel that companies were looking to increase and to support the uptick in demand. They were also challenged with employees having to deal with the events of 2020. So having the ability to offer a lot more of that content through digital channels in a much scalable way also was something where they were able to, with this intelligent data, respond more quickly to that demand and say, yes, we need to get more of this content that we're getting an influx of phone calls around out into the websites, into the mobile apps, into more scalable channels, maybe social media, depending on what product and services you offer. And then the transformation of employee tasks, right? Not just in terms of maybe, as I mentioned, the shift from taking sort of support calls through the phone to also, reducing that workload through digital channels, but also knowing that maybe there is a shift in where people need to spend their time. One company saw, because of the closure of their stores and everything, but they also saw that they were getting more phone calls and was still demand for their product more through the direct channel. They transformed a lot of their employees from frontline to actually be inside sales and customer service, right? So being able to think about what are the different ways to respond? So that's another example of how intelligent data can help you think about, even within technical communications, where you need to prioritize the information that you are getting out. In the better to understand the customer, I gave a couple of examples of what has been done by having this kind of data. But here are a couple of other ones. And one interesting one was with a retail brokerage, right? That identified that 27% of users failed to complete their trades through the mobile app, and completed it on the desktop on the same day. So they were trying to figure out how they can personalize that experience for those who failed in one channel to work in another, as they figured out how to redesign. This could be applied to technical communications as well. As you have analytics around the technical communication, you could see where the drop-off points are, what people are finding, what might be information that need to be kind of correlated, because someone who's most likely searching for one thing also needs this other piece of content. And also if there's areas where in that information there may be actually a phone call or some other support channel reached, and understanding where the blockages are in the content that's being put out there. So having that analytics, these are some great examples of how companies have really responded to it, but there are ample examples in tech comms as well, applying these learnings to your own story. Besides the intelligence aspect and data aspect of it, the other part that's really sort of important is the response of it, right? So the more content. And I gave examples where, because of this learning in data, being able to move it to also respond around content. And I think, standards like DITA and ways to break down the content in more modular ways is a way of being able to have that content so it can be composed and recomposed into different channels, allow for different contributors to come into play, allow for different formats, being able to do personalization. So it makes that content a lot more fluid to be able to pull together in different ways, to summarize it through shorter channels, to surface it in places that it needs to be surfaced, as opposed to being locked up in unstructured forms, which in the past have been the standard, right? That there is this demand to not only have a great intelligence, but to break up that content so that it can flow into different channels. And why has that been hard? And what we've seen is why we've been really investing at Adobe into different ways to structure content, why obviously we are supporters of DITA, and why we are very involved in hosting this DITA World Conference, is because we've seen the challenges of trying to respond to this chaos when the content is not structured or tagged, and when there isn't that intelligence, right? And one, these are the 4 key challenges that we have seen, or patterns we've seen, that have stopped the protagonists, which is you, from achieving your goals, right? First is slow time to market. Due to heavy code and the need for different content updates, delivery, that's really been something that slowed things down. So you might have an idea and saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could surface this content to this particular audience? And then you find out, oh, this content is trapped in this format. It can't be sort of broken out. There's a lot of challenges with in the second bucket, which then gets into inconsistencies, right? So then it's like, well, why can't we just break this content down? It's like, no, then there's 2 versions. It's inconsistent. And if something changes in one area, how do you ensure that it is reflected in another area? In fact, one of the brands we worked with, because of their use of structured content and things like content fragments, what used to be something that took them, 35 hours to do now takes them minutes to do because they have the structure in place, and changing it in one place allows for it to flow to all the channels and ensure consistencies. So this is not about only technology, but processes and data formats and content formats as well. The third is ineffective personalization. So as more and more people are using the digital channels, what we're seeing is that companies have the challenge that they may serve different audience segments. And that was maybe much easier in the analog world, where you had maybe a salesperson, a support person that could ask those questions, and then based on that understanding, be able to point them to the relevant content or support documentation or things that they may need. In this digital world, the challenge is, one, first making sure the content is available and accessible through all the channels. But the second that quickly comes to play is making sure that it is the content that's needed and it's findable, it's searchable. And that's even more true on mobile devices more than desktop. And the fact that based on the increase you saw of the B2B stats of how many businesses and users are moving to the digital channel, you have a lot of new folks that are coming on board that may have gone through an analog channel, may have gone through an in-person meeting that's now trying to hit your website, mobile apps through different channels to get this information. So they may not be as familiar with the ways to navigate your site as before. And so personalization becomes even more important and also more challenging as you're working through this area. And the fourth is legacy sort of infrastructure. So things that maybe with the influx we saw of people moving to digital in 2020, it was a spike, right? It was a spike, especially in companies that sold essential goods. But it's been a spike overall because just in general, people are going through digital channels that a lot of the legacy infrastructure just wasn't able to handle the increase in traffic, in demand on those systems. And so being able to get to a cloud infrastructure that can auto scale has been really, really important. So these are all challenges, but it's also good news in the sense of these are all things that if we can overcome, really does put technical communications more readily accessible, more available, more personalized, and more impactful to the overall customer experience. And when we talk about structured content, earlier I showed sort of my art studio where I had different files and different areas where I store things. I even did mention by that cart, if you notice, for those of you who are observant, the cart in the front of it includes all of my tubes of paint. Like literally, I had this issue where I was buying so many different colors of paint because all the paint would get into like the bottom of the box and I would forget that I already had quinacridone magento and it was like my third tube of it, and I would buy another tube and then I would be even in more chaos. And so what I've done there is really made sure that I had drawers that allowed for all the paints to lie flat. I try to keep them in the order of from warm to cool. Sometimes it gets messed up, but at least it's one layer. So what do I mean by when I talk about structured digital content? So here, if you look at it, what we talk about here is for each of these, areas to really be able to address it in different ways. And this is how at Adobe we're thinking about that. We're thinking about what is that method in which we can store structured digital content so we enable that chaos of creativity and being able to also adapt to it. Inconsistent experience, I'll give an example here, right? Having that unified content platform and single source can ensure that consistency. So having everything in one place. I have all my paints now in one place. So I know that if it's not in there, it's not like hiding in some other part of the organization or of my studio. The slow time to market, making sure that not only is there a data standard, but there are applications that support that digital standard in a way that actually ensures reuse and streamline of those publishing workflows. So I know that the product team here at Adobe has been thinking about that, from all the tools that are needed and review workflows and the web editor and all of these things to be able to address this. And then that intelligent content authoring, right? Being able to make sure that all the analytics that have been put towards marketing content also flows to technical communications content, because it's really important, but also because it connects the customer journey from marketing. So what has been our continued investments in the unifying of content and data? So first, being able to migrate and create and integrate with all of the structured type of content. And this is the standards that we support. This is the work that we've done to make sure that framework is structured and all of that content can be ingested into AEM as a component of content management, and that there are tools around it that allow for tagging, translation, search, the workflows, versioning, the web editor, the review, the reports, all of that, to make sure that there is not only a streamlined way of being able to manage this content for technical communications, but you're able to also get reports around it. What's also great is that this is integrated in, obviously, with the asset management assets. Right? And that's important because some of the things that are rich images or videos that often are in marketing, sometimes I get comments that once you go from pre-purchase to post-purchase, is like all those pretty pictures and all the wonderful, understandable, engaging content kind of disappears, and then you just get text, right? And so making sure that that connection between all the great visual content that oftentimes come from Creative Cloud and traditional marketing content is accessible and be able to use where it's appropriate to illustrate and showcase things that then the text, the video, all the other documentation content is there as well. And then being able to deliver it across to all the different channels. And we talked about obviously the site, but it's also in PDF, right? I've seen, especially in the financial services area, where they want structured content that has been reviewed by legal, has been approved, etc. But they may want to, depending on the size of the client, personalize that content, bring in different fragments or different things that would be applicable for that particular client. So sometimes still presenting a very, document-like view in PDF, but having it structured in a way that allows for that personalization. The mobile app, through the sales channel with the CRM platform, knowledge bases, and of course, IoT apps. What's been interesting also in 2020 is a big focus from companies looking at customer loyalty and service and support. And some of that is through being able to, the traditional channels of getting someone in to fix it, etc. But more, there's been also a view of, can we put into our product that may now be an IoT, right? That may have a mobile app connected to that actual device, right? I think about my home now. I have a mobile app connected to my refrigerator, and it's actually been useful, and it tells the temperature, it tells of any issues, it tells me whether the ice maker is full, if there's any concerns and issues that maybe my refrigerator needs to repair, or any maintenance things that need to be done. So all of those things that there used to be the thinking of technical communications, documents, and things for repair by a specialist that comes in person to someone's business or home, That also is being reimagined. We're saying how much of that could be delivered in the mobile app or the screen of the product to allow for someone to actually be able to have preventative measures, create a better experience, and drive greater loyalty. And so all of that product information, technical communication can be sort of managed and then delivered through either authoring tools as well as APIs in a headless manner to all of these different places and within the organization. So the product documentation really becomes the foundation, the bedrock, the source of all of this creativity within the rest of the organization to help customers better use the product and get more value and understanding of the products and services. So with that, transforming content in a chaotic world, we've seen the acceleration of digital transformation. So everything we've been talking about making technical communications and product documentation more accessible with marketing, with merchandising. 2020, as chaotic as it's been, has actually accelerated that need for companies across B2B and B2C. There's a need to become digital first if companies aren't already, and to quickly adapt. And in order to do that, a big part of that is to be able to better understand customers in real time through intelligent data, but then also be able to respond quickly to that, not wait for a presentation where I flash up Adobe or McKinsey stats to tell you what happened several months ago or 6 months ago, but so you can tell exactly when in real time behaviors are changing with your buyers, with your users, and then be able to have the content in a structured way so that you're able to quickly respond and have that foundation to respond to the chaos, and also so that you can be more creative because you have more time to be strategic in your approach than be sort of running behind, trying to respond to the changes that are happening in the world. So I want to thank you, and I want to thank Stefan for hosting this event, and I'll turn it back